buttons change. Welcome to our Saturday night Bucky meeting. We are working on a book, A Fuller Intention, and we're quite a ways through it. I'd say we're approaching one half. We're going to be starting tonight on page 126, and we're going to be reading about the frequency of close packing of spheres and continue with that conversation. Manu, you're in from Cape Town. Welcome to the call. How are you feeling this morning for you? And what do you anticipate?
Well, I'm feeling good. I think that was a good introduction from Anne, energized me. And well, I expect that, we really go into things like that. Now we're not just studying for studying, we're studying for application. And I think that was a good one. So, Richard, how do you feel? What do you expect?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. We had a really nice trim tab meeting this morning. There's a big event going on in Edwardsville, Illinois, near Carbondale, celebrating Bucky Fuller's contributions. Doug Jacobs was there, who was the playwright of the original film and his play. And his nephew has just done another one, which he'll be presenting, and several people on the Trim Tab group were there. And Kurt McNamara, with his camera, walked us through the Geoscope building that's there, and they were doing a world game. So it was really a vicarious pleasure this morning to feel that you were actually there for part of the presentation. So I'm kind of on a high in that respect, and I was excited earlier to tell Anne about the Galileo Committee on Consciousness in Education meeting that I attended earlier this week, and so anyway, it's just nice to get these kinds of contributions going back and forth. And next week, next Sunday, I'll be leaving with my family, heading for Ireland to go on an ancestry adventure that we've been on for the last several years. So looking forward to that.
Cool.
Joel, you're back. How are you feeling, and what's your expectations for this evening?
Yeah, I'm feeling actually a little better than I did about an hour ago. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are interesting going on. I don't know if Richard mentioned, but we were both in the same meeting a little bit earlier. I don't know if you already spoke about it, Richard, but
yeah.
Okay. So I won't go back over that. But that was really, it was really special to be able to see those guys at the Southern Illinois University, and all the things that Bucky actually had accomplished. Part of it, some of the things he collected and a lot of his ideas coming into fruition. And I was actually on a very at the tail end of an interesting call about the idea of fragmentation, and I really do think that that's a big problem in the world today. So we were talking about, and I think this speaks directly to Bucky, in the sense that we're fragmented and divided. We're specialized, and I'm speaking in the abstract, but just I'm talking about whether it be information flows or people's agendas. And I think that makes it really hard to make the world work for 100% of the people. So and so that was an interesting observation that I just recently had. But CJ's addressing that with comprehensivity. Anyway, so my expectation today, is to really just continue on some of the things that we have been building on, related to packing and the optimizational use of space, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. Who hasn't gone?
Anne, if she
Anne.
has audio.
And how do you feel, and what do you want to take away from today?
Okay. I'm going to assume that Anne is having trouble with her audio. Anne, when you're ready, just speak right up. And I'm going to go for it today. I'm excited to be here. Oh, good. Anne, go for it.
I'm speaking.
Oh, dear. Okay. So I'm feeling pretty good tonight. I'm getting used to a 9 o'clock time slot, Mountain Daylight, and trusting that it's the right slot. I'm gonna.
Back.
Good, Anne, are you back?
Yeah.
Go
You
ahead.
finish first, Steve?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm really actually I'm very happy with the earlier discussion that we had before we started the meeting today. Because then these are things that we know people need to know. Did you see the slide I shared in our group chat, the one about curriculum and human element?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because the problem with the curriculum is that all over the world is that the human element got systemized out of it, right? I think I've spoken about that. So we did a slide to show what would transform the children, right? Which is actually to bring the human element back in. That's when you start the transformation starts to happen there. However, to understand what being human is children, and we as human beings are noisy, high-spirited, random, fun, unpredictable. This is what makes us human, and all these things are not accepted in school. So we actually had to come up with a way to show it, because talking about the human element, yes, people talk about creativity and empathy and all that, but they don't get that being part of human is the energy, the energy, the spirit, the noise, the fun. And like you said, consciousness, sorry, boleh kasih masuk, yeah, thank you. Sorry, the phone is like interfering. Yeah, so we realized that when we talk down that path, and like consciousness, just now we are talking about it, right? That you, what was it? Was said that you can't read it, right? You cannot. In the brain, do we see consciousness, right? So what was it? Was it Richard? You were saying something about that, or was it Steve?
I think Richard Richard initiated that. Yeah.
No, and then you were saying something about consciousness, and the fact is that there's this lady who's looking into that, and that you cannot read it. You cannot it's just like our thoughts, does it show up in our brain, and so on, right? So that's right now the problem with the human element, right? Because these things like wanting fun and being random and all that, does it show up in the brain, or can you read it? Can you you get where I'm going with it? Yeah. And because of that, people disregard it. They completely disregard it. And it's such a big fight, for us, like a big challenge to try and even convince people on that. So yeah, anyway, the meetings, our meetings here, I'm so thankful that I get to share this, and you're accepting, very, very open to hearing a lot of the things that we've been, that is necessary for being a human, and allowing me to explore that. And even like earlier on, we were talking about the disagreements and all that in the group. Yeah, I just want to just say go for it, guys. I think it's just healthy. It's you actually see, because when people talk and they share stuff, very often you can talk about it without without being engaged emotionally, or even like having the ownership of your thoughts and things like this. And I see this showing up really, really well here in our group. Okay, yeah. So that's why I'm looking for more of that. So who hasn't shared yet?
Good. So I'm going to go ahead and share then. Thank you, Anne,
Sylvia,
very
over to
much.
you.
All righty. And so I was saying, thank you, Anne, for sharing, and I'm happy. Yeah, I really like sharing. And so this is really good. And I wanted to say that I'll be here next week, but the week after and the week after, I won't be available. So if somebody wants to host this call, they can host the call for the 2 weeks. And probably, I don't know, Joe, what your time is, but I think before in the past, you've used my login and gotten into my
Account, yeah, sure.
yeah, my account. The thing that has to be done is that you and I need to talk about, but the recordings need to be it'll only hold 2 recordings now,
Okay,
because I'm
so
not
I need to
permanent.
offload one and
You need to
then,
offload them, and then and you could actually, I could give you if you can get them back to me any way you want to through Google Docs or whatever. I
okay,
could actually give you my login to the YouTube account as well, but I have a routine that I go through. You could store them there and not publish them. That would be cool. We'll need to talk
okay,
about that. What's the best way to offload and send them to me? So I'll be here next week, but I won't be for the next 2 weeks. I'm going into a 10-day meditation with a 90 vow of silence. That's exciting. And I'm looking forward to that. Okay, we are on, we ended up last week on page 127. However, I think it would be good for us to start on page 126 because that paragraph, the last paragraph we read, actually starts the, actually is a good intro for the section that we're going to be reading. So, and I'll go ahead and start tonight. I like it when we rotate. But it's up to you guys if you want to do whatever. But here, I'll give it a start. Everybody should be able to see that, right?
Mhm.
Yep. Okay,
yeah,
there we
I
go.
am sorry.
The theme of Fuller's tetrahedral sphere packing is the presence of or absence of nuclei. The word nucleus evokes the image of a central ball spatially surrounded by other balls, which is exactly the way Fuller uses it for the VE packings. However, his observation about the tetrahedral patterns are based on a somewhat different approach. Most of the impenetrability of the sphere packing sections in synergetics can be removed in one simple clarification. A nucleus in VE packing is defined as a ball at the geometrical center of the whole
Structure.
cluster,
Yes.
whereas a nucleus in tetrahedral stacks is a ball at the exact center of an individual planar layer. There'll be a picture of that down below here. So here's an individual planar layer, and the
Mhm.
nucleus is the ball in the center of that planar layer. And that's where we left off last time. Start with a 4-ball tetrahedron developed above, which consists of a 4th ball added to a triangle of 3 others. Next, the simple 4-ball tetrahedron is placed on top of a flat 6-ball triangular base, creating a tetrahedron with 3 balls per edge. See figure 810. There's your tetrahedron with 3 balls per edge.
Can I make a comment? Just a quick comment.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That this narrative, another narrative would be to say that you have 4 balls, flat, and 1 rolls on top.
Say that again. You have 4 balls flat.
Yes, you have a structure of 4 balls in a square,
Okay, a square.
And then one just rolls, because curve on the top of it, of the three others.
So now there are 3 balls on the base and 1 ball
On
so
top to
that's-
make it a tetrahedron. Yes.
make a tetrahedron. Okay, good. Is that your comment? Are you complete?
Yes, yes. That was
Okay.
it was just
Mhm.
a parallel narrative into
Good.
how to make a tetrahedron from balls. Because she says you first had 3 balls flat, and then you take a third you put on top. That's what she said. I'm
Okay.
saying that you might have 4 flat and then just 1 roll. Because and that is more, in my opinion, in tune with what we say, that initially the world is flat.
Hmm.
It's just IVM. It just, whatever direction that you see, it looks like flat sheet. It's continuum at indefinite.
Okay.
And then an impulse on it makes it fold, like gravity.
Yeah.
It folds. So if you had balls that were in layers, infinite, and then you have an impulse on it, one will roll on top of the others to make a structure locally.
Okay. And this is
All right.
this is a little different narrative approach. But
Yes.
this stack, here's your tetrahedron up here, these 4 balls. Then here are 3, 5, 6 over there, and then this whole thing's going to stack on top of that. And I think that's what she's talking about here. Let's see. There are 3 layers with 10 balls altogether, 6 plus 3 plus 1. Throughout his sphere packing studies, his sphere packing studies, Fuller uses the number of tangency points per edge. In other words, the number of spaces between the spheres along an edge of the cluster rather than the number of spheres. Or the assignment of frequency. Oh, for the assignment of frequency. So he used the number of edges between the spheres rather than the number of spheres for assignment of frequency. The 4-ball tetrahedron is thus 1 frequency.
Mm-hmm.
As is appropriate for the first case. The next case is a 10-ball tetrahedron, is a 2 frequency.
Mm-hmm.
There's your 2 frequency.
Mm-hmm.
10 balls. So there's 6 on the bottom and 4 there. That means 10. That's a 2 frequency. We can visualize each sphere cluster polyhedron corresponds to a line drawing or toothpick structure in which the sphere's centers locate vertices which are interconnected by lines or toothpick edges through tangency points. Recalling that frequency is defined as the number of modular subdivisions, the justification for Fuller's frequency assignment is evident from this translation, because the number of subdivisions or line segments per edge corresponds to the number of spaces between the spheres rather than the number of spheres themselves, which correspond directly to the vertices in figure 7.10.
Can I show something?
Sure.
This is 1 frequency. This is 2 frequency.
Yeah.
1 frequency. This.
Yeah.
2 frequency.
Yeah.
You can add.
Because you're counting the spaces between the
Yes, that's what
holes.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is 1 frequency. You see, that is 1 frequency is this
Right.
tetrahedron.
Right.
2 frequency is that one.
Yeah. And that is the 10 ball. That's the 10
Yes.
ball figure shown in figure 10.
Yeah. And then you show that it is envelope, open envelope, open envelope, open envelope,
Right.
open envelope. Going
So there,
radially. Yeah.
so there's 1 frequency.
Yes.
There's 2 frequencies.
Yes.
And of course, there's Manu's, the dotted lines represent the holes in Manu's structure.
Yes.
And then that is stacked on here. And very cool. Any
Yeah.
other comments or questions? Okay,
When you do, to me, when you do it with paper, it's very telling because you have plain paper, and then by folding and adjusting the tetrahedra, you create those voids. And you can
right.
see them clear. You see that?
Yeah,
And then you can see that actual fact, the one frequency is two tetrahedra, one against the other. You see that?
yeah.
Because this void is the convex.
Yeah. Now I
This is the
want
this is the concave, that is the convex.
right on.
The two have come together in a Star of David.
So he's kind of counting the convections instead of the concavitions.
Yeah.
Manu, if you hold your thing up one more time, if you guys will notice, there's those three. Oops, just hold up one side like you were so we see the three holes,
Yeah.
three convex
Yeah.
spaces. If you look on this little thing right here, there's the three convex spaces as well. 1, 2, 3. So it just so
Exactly.
happens that the side is the same as the base, which is the same as any of the sides. Those four
Yeah.
faces are going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that
And
dotted line,
notice,
yeah,
Nice.
yes. Notice how the convex is, where it is.
yeah,
The convex is not like following at one point the concave. The convex is in. They are dancing. The two are dancing. The convex is perpendicular
right.
to the concave. And that is what you call uh 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 what we discussed last week. Okay, it was on Wednesday.
Well, I'm going to bring up that discussion to a degree because what we discussed in the last couple of weeks is there are no spheres.
Yeah.
There are only interrelationships. So the sticks, so to speak, as Amy has referred to them, is what is real, and the spheres are just the way the energy accumulates around the vertex, but it's not visible. The interrelationships are visible. The nodes are
Yes.
invisible. The interrelationships are visible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the reason why Manu's figure there is so powerful because it shows the concave, the convex, and it shows the sticks rather than the spheres.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cool.
And
Any
it is
other?
a relationship. And relationship, start making a connotation of relationship and fold. And fold always is at the confluence of two things that are not at 180 degrees. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Any edge of a tetrahedron that we see there is a confluence of two things that are at angle different from 180 degrees. It's not this, it is that. And that's why you see the. So if water, let's just take water. If you have two streams, if the two streams were running parallel, you see nothing, you just see two parallel streams. But if one came into the other, you see ripples,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So that is it. That is what we have to understand. When you're talking about relationship, always think about edge, always think about folding, and always think about the encounter of two things creating an event.
Now, this is interesting because I've been thinking as Manu was talking about what I just said, which is kind of an epiphany for me, that the node is not visible. The only way I see the node, the only way I see the sphere is how it relates to the other nodes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, um, one could also be said of a river or a lake or an ocean even, because there are times like when I was a surfer, we'd go out in the morning, we'd have glass. In other words, that ocean would be freaking completely flat. And in that sense, the water's not visible. But as soon as a wave occurs, then the water becomes visible, so to speak, using this metaphor, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so that's interesting because one of my favorite meditation themes is from, I think it was Jack Kornfield wrote the book, but I'm not sure. It's called When the Water is Still, the moon appears. And it shows a pristine lake in the mountains. And there's this pristine lake, and the moon is reflecting off of the lake, which is, again, it's an interrelationship. It's the stick. I'm not really seeing the thing. I'm seeing what radiates out of the thing. I'm seeing the sticks, interestingly enough. Okay,
And
go ahead.
that sounds like it might parallel the other common knowledge or understanding from Fuller about, in order for there to be self, a thing, there must be awareness, and in order for awareness, there must be otherness.
Yes.
No otherness, no awareness, no self. So
Right.
it's the awareness that's if you want that's seeable or has to be knowable in order to see
Yeah.
either the other or the self.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
parallel to what we were just
What?
talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
what
think
Richard
so.
said is so powerful because we discover ourselves. We don't know ourselves.
Yeah. Self-aware.
We are in the process. Yes. We are those, what Steve was talking about. We are vertexes. We don't know ourselves.
We can never see ourselves.
Yes.
Right.
It is through our interaction with others, that we imagine ourselves.
Right.
Right.
That we see ourselves in the mirror. That's why Becky say, you've never seen yourself.
Yeah.
We experience those relationships,
Right.
and then we take those relationships because they tend to repeat to form patterns, and then we build an image of the self that we are.
Yeah.
The other factor in this for me is that when I was teaching in social work, I was teaching the invisibility of the relationship between, that you can't see it in a social situation. And your eye will only see something if you want physical, like another person or another thing. So how does those two kind of align with each other in terms of being able to put it into a curriculum and discussion and dialogue?
I think it's perfect because I think I see the nodes and I think the nodes are real, but the nodes are not real. They're the illusion. The reality is the interrelationship. And because I'm a physical being, I look in a mirror and say, oh, I'm a physical being. I must be real. But I am only as real as the way I interrelate with other beings. So the reality is the interrelationship, not the node. Am I almost approaching what you're asking, Richard?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why it's so critical in this human service work that you pay attention to those relationships, but most people can't do it because they don't see them,
Right.
and they see the illusion in
Right.
what you've just described, and so we were trying to get them to, through a metaphor or some way, to be able to see the relationship, um, not opposed to the others, but to see it so that they wouldn't stray away from it.
Right.
They would stay focused on it because that's what they were trying to do, is change or help the relationship between two or more nodes to get along well with each other, to do that
Right.
100% of humanity sort of accomplishment, one at a time or two at a time.
So what comes to me is another good metaphor is astrophysics, because most of when we look up into the sky, we can't see anything. And all we see is a certain frequency of light, which is less than 1% of the entire electromagnetic system. And in order to see see the universe the way it really is, we have to put up infrared, ultraviolet. We have to put up all these different ways of looking at whatever it is, and we never see reality. We just see the reflection of these certain rays that come off of there. Like when I'm looking at when the water is still, the moon appears. I think I'm seeing the moon. I'm not seeing the moon. I'm seeing the light that's reflected off of whatever that moon is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
We see a star, right?
Yeah.
We see a star, but now when we see a star, is expression of that of radiation,
Right.
right? And that's what we see when we look at this. We see stars, we see radiation. That is from the impact of two things. It's like you hit something, some calm surface, and then you have a splash out.
Right.
That's what we see.
Yeah.
We see the result of things that happen before we ever sense them.
Right.
Well, it's
They
like
happen, and then
Bucky
we
says,
sense their trajectories. Yes.
That's what
In a
happens at
relation.
CERN. That's what happens at CERN. They take these weird frequencies of things, they get them going really fast and smash them into each other and see what flies out. And then they say, okay, we can't see a Higgs boson, but look at all this stuff that flew out. That indicates there's a boson field. And this is a condensation of Higgs field energy. They can't see it, but they can see what happens when we splash into it.
Yeah. So to me, the very powerful thing, I mean, I'm just refining this model here that we alluded to, that of duality of two things. Everything, the IVM is all over. And from time to time, there are impulses. So I don't know from where, but there are impulses that come and disturb the IVM and create the events that we see. And the basic model of a tetrahedron is built with 4 balls that are flat like this. You know, a metaphor of IVM, because you have IVM, it's just straighter all over, in all directions, still the same thing. And then you hit it with something, and a third, rolls over onto the top of 3 neighboring.
Yeah, and I don't usually think we think of things rolling over on top.
And
We
that
think,
and that
we
is
think of it.
structuration. And the structure is a consequence of an event. That is an encounter of two things. An event, as Bucky defined it, that's why I define all of those things that you're talking about, is an encounter of two things. We might not know what the things are, we might not even care, but there's a consequence of the encounter that matters to us. Right? Temperature increases because something happened outside of what we know. We just know that the season arrived because something happened. And if that thing happened, it's going to be warm. If it's going to be warm, in order for us to survive, we have to equip to survive that heat. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
That's it. That's it.
Go ahead, Joe.
In between the two, there is an impulse.
Go ahead, Joe.
now I was just going to say, you know, if we're looking at this entire chapter as a whole, and we just had to, you know, what we just discussed right here, it's talking about the idea, as you said, the relationships between the nodes, but that also gets into the idea of stability and resilience, which actually relates directly to what Anne was talking about. So even if you go back to, you know, the cube octahedron, as well as the what was it? The twist cube octahedron that we were going over, you know, a couple of weeks ago. If we were you know, just even looking at those structures themselves, the whole chapter is about stability and demonstrating the different relationships between the nodes and how they actually can make a structure, how they create a structure. So then if you see the interconnectedness, then that's, you know, you can even start to use the idea of the philosophical concepts that, you know, you were alluding to, this idea of self and other and the relationships between people as well. So I think that, you know, that's, if we go through each section and we think about what we've, you know, kind of what's the underlying theme, these are different ways of looking at the connections that obviously Bucky has identified. So, I mean, it's important because obviously how structures are created, you know, has an impact on what we, you know, the patterns of reality, like the patterns that exist within you know, within nature.
Right. You complete?
Completely.
So I'm looking at this, and what I'm realizing, Richard, you've just really helped me on this. The nodes are not real. The reality is the radials between the nodes.
Right.
Yes.
In actuality, the nodes do not exist. And if I'm in a client relationship, I've got to understand that I think I see this guy, but I'm not seeing this guy. I'm only seeing something that's at the end of these radials. And what I need to do is decide what those radials are, which I can't see.
Right.
I see the node and I just assume. What I need to do is look at the radials because the nodes they're not real. They're not solid. The nodes only reflect the energy that's given to them.
Correct.
And I've given it a radial, so it's acting like a steel ball
Right.
because I gave it a magnetic stick. If I gave it a toothpick, it would have to be a gummy.
Yeah.
You know. And so it would change to a gummy just like that. Okay, cool.
Another aha thing to me here is that even, can you show again that thing on the flat? The sphere on the flat. No, the
What?
sphere on the flat.
Yeah,
The
okay.
sphere on the flat, yes.
You're talking about sharing the screen.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Which sphere?
You know, on page 127.
I'm on page
Okay.
127.
Yes. I was thinking one thing. In reality, when you look really at the flat, those 3 and 4, they are not disposed as flat as it is, as linear it is. They are curved. They tend to form a ring around. What I'm saying now, you have the first ball, the second ball, that third ball, you know, at the flat, on the flat one at the bottom.
Okay.
Is it as straight as it is there? The axes are there as straight? Or is it like it form a curve like this?
Yeah. I think that we've all acknowledged that those radials are actually curved,
Okay.
and we use them as sticks just because the Renault, I think it's called the Renault tetrahedron, right? Is the curved tetrahedron is actually a better example of what's going on because things aren't straight. There are no straight lines in the universe. There are no spheres and there are no straight lines.
Yes. And as it's flat there, Steve, I think that for the visual of people trying to know what the convex is, those gaps between the spheres,
Yeah,
that is the convex.
right. And as she says,
Yes, the spheres are the concave. That's what is going to form the structure. The
yeah,
gap in between are the convex. Those are the radiant, those are the frequencies.
and that's why Bucky uses those to count
The frequencies, yes.
the frequency, recalling the
Yes.
frequency. Right on.
Yes. And they are convex rarely because they vibrate. They vibrate, they radiate out. That's why it's frequencies. One ring at a certain frequency, farther is another. You understand that when it's farther, it's slower, right?
Okay.
When it's right around it, it's faster. It's faster frequency. If what we are observing is from the ball that is at the center of the flat there,
Yeah.
the frequency just surrounding it is faster. It's fast. It's
Right.
fast frequency.
That's a good
The
point.
faster you go, because it takes time to travel
Right.
to that circle, is going to be lower frequency.
Yeah.
It's going to be longer wavelength, lower frequency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Triangular clusters, each with one or more row than the last, are stacked to create larger and larger tetrahedral packings. We place the 10 ball 2 frequency tetrahedron on top of the next triangular base, which itself consists of 10 balls. This goes back to our formula that we debated fairly intensely last week, where we're on the one hand we're counting on the current set we're counting the number of interrelationships, but that same formula is used to count the number of spheres
Yeah.
in the previous set, which itself is 10 balls. Get a 3-frequency tetrahedron with 20 spheres together, see figure 810. We have thus begun a list of values that might be called tetrahedral numbers, 4, 10, 20, followed by 20 plus the additional triangular layer of 15 for a total of 35, see figure 811. And there it is.
Mm.
The progression can be continued indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And he uses 1V, 2V, 3V. But that's a
The progression can be continued indefinitely. What does it say?
yeah.
What does it remind you of? Finite universe,
Right.
Yeah.
infinite divisions or relationship.
And what I notice here is that as a cute way to remember, the way she is denoting these, tetrahedral frequency is V, and then the progression is 1V, 2V, 3V. If I look at Manu's model with his holes, those look like V's.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
can
that's
count
true.
those V's, and that's the convex spaces between the nodes.
But that's actually mu in Greek. Mu.
Oh, this is a mu, you think?
Yes, it's a mu.
Oh, I think a mu.
Because the general convention in
in geometric.
in mechanics,
Yeah.
electricity algebra is to count frequency in mu.
And she is using a italics V,
Yes.
which I think is cool for convex and for the picture of Manu's model. So I'm going to stick with V. Okay, who wants to read? Anybody want to read next?
Joe
Yeah,
is
sure.
pretty good at that.
Yeah, sure. Consider the different individual layers. There is a ball in the exact geometric center of some of the triangular groups, while others, having 3 balls around the exact center, instead are left with a central nest. Successive triangular clusters reveal a specific pattern. Every third layer has a central ball or nucleus. Fuller describes this in progression as a yes, no, no, yes, no, no pattern. To see how it works, let's look at the first.
Wow. Can we stop there and comment on this?
Yeah, that's
Do
actually.
you see what I see?
Hang on. No,
Do you see it? I see that the world is 2. The only real thing is everything else is a repetition of 2.
Yeah.
You have a structure, then the convex of it, and that's it. And then it repeats. A structure that linked to a convex to form a binomial. You call it binomial? I don't know. I don't think that's binomial in that strict explanation, but I just want to say to form a dual. And everything else is a repetition of that around in congruence. That's why you have the 2 to the power of something. Every 3 balls is stop and repeat. There is a ball in the exact geometric center of some rectangular group, while others having 3 balls around the exact center instead are left with centralness. Successive triangulation cluster reveal a specific pattern. Every third layer has a central ball. Every third layer has a central ball. What is it? You remember the bow tie?
Yes, absolutely.
Every third layer has a central ball, the bow tie. Concave, convex, with the 0 phase in the middle. the center. Concave, convex, zero phase. Three things.
Hmm.
Do you understand? I understand it, or am I
No. I mean, it actually makes
am I
perfect
saying
sense.
some BS here?
No. I mean, no, I was just actually jotting it down.
Concave, the first. Convex, the second. In the middle of the two, there is 0 point.
Mm-hmm.
That 0 point is the center. And then you just repeat the concave. That's where universe is built. Concave, convex, center. Concave, convex, center. Concave, convex, center. So if you take one, it means that if you take the whole universe, you can disassemble it as you are disassembling the engine of a car into parts. Right?
Yeah.
So if you can disassemble and reassemble, that's the way you design.
Correct.
Because our design is to look at the model of the universe and to understand it and try to do artifacts that repeat that. So in our mind, we have seen the parts together. We have now taken those parts apart, draw them graphically to build that design. And then we go and put them together again in an artifact to show that actually you understood it properly. It works.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the ability to take something apart and put it back together is actually the ability to simplify something so that, you know, you understand, essentially you can deconstruct it and put it back together. You have to understand the basic essence of what something is. So and let me just back up. Actually, the way you explained that too, unity is plural at minimum two, makes a lot more sense too, and within that framework. But even the idea that you can strip a car down to whatever its basic the basic components that you need in order to operate, right? You can put together, you understand what it is, what the minimum is, that in order to, you know, what it is that will make it a car and make it go. So that's the idea, that you can deconstruct something and then reconstruct something. And then actually this has we've talked about this here in the past, the idea of the OODA loop that's often used in the military. And there's a constant reorientation, observe, orient, decide, and act. Now that's more survivability mode. I understand that. But part of it is taking something apart and putting it back together.
Yeah, but that's exactly
what.
what Elon understood, and other guys, many others have not understood.
Yeah, no,
Elon
that's the reason.
That's what he did. He does. Elon, what he sees a system that is diverse. You take out all the components of a system, and you see what essential function a packet. So let's say there were 20 components. You take them back together and see that you can put 6 together in one component that perform the essential part of that system that you wanted to replicate. It packaged that into something that's become one part.
Yeah.
And it does it. If you do it 3, it just from 20 you come to 3 parts. And if that is serialized, it makes the process of mass production a lot simpler, faster to understand.
Oh, and that's why in his engineering philosophy, automation is actually one of the last steps, because you don't think about automating something until you actually deconstruct it to its most simple form.
Yes.
So then you automate.
Yeah.
And so that's where you know, that his approach, we can, you know, decide whether or not it does apply, he's applying it now, is basically take, essentially take everything out, delete parts of the process until you get to what you basically need, and then add back in whatever you do need. Like, meaning, and he said you should be adding parts back in to the actual structure. So that, and if you're not adding more than 10% in, you're not cutting enough. So the idea that you're breaking something up, and you have at the minimum, and then you decide what you absolutely need within that.
What is the
there's the flaw.
emotions?
Treating the human system like a machine.
That's exactly right.
And
No, but let me ask a question.
we're going to, because we've been taught to think like a machine, we're going to allow it to go on for way too long.
But Richard, if you allow me, I can just put that aside a little bit. I wanted to make an interjection on Joe's flow. I was going to ask Joe, which is the simplest motion? What is the irreducible system for a motion, for moving? Which is the simplest? First, how many components does it have? It is a lever, the lever.
That's it.
It's a lever. You have the point of action, you have a fulcrum, and you have the mass there, full stop. That forms the lever. You move here, you move there. That's the minimum. And how many is it? 3
11.
components. 3. The force here, the weight there, and the fulcrum, the lever. And Bucky uses that extensively. So any complex system, if you can reduce it to a lever, you simplify the system to the simplest that nature employs. Nature employs leverage everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.
No, that's absolutely right.
Yes. And it goes, what I'm trying to see here just goes with what Amy is saying there. That every 3 you repeat. That is a lever, the first lever you have.
But I mean, and that my interjection is that the more we understand that and keep understanding it in the context of a lever or a machine, the more we'll let somebody who tries to do that apply that to the human machine as if it's the same thing. We, meaning the people of the world, are going to let these people carry on with that. And it's back to what Anne said earlier, that until people learn about the humanness in people, we're going to keep treating people like machines, and we'll just get rid of them whenever we think the machine isn't doing what it's supposed to do.
Well, I think that you're hitting on 2 different points that, it can be a both and. So it doesn't have to be necessarily either or. And I'll give you a perfect example that, so you have to look at the opposite, and you have to state the opposite, right? So what, essentially the philosophy that's being used right now is, basically saying is that we have a bias to add parts in, and that as opposed to taking parts out to its most simple form. So, and I mean, I can give you a perfect example of this, right?
On a machine.
I'll give you a perfect example of this, right? Yeah, and you know what? The machine drowns out people. The organization becomes dysfunctional. And I'll give you a perfect example. The example that is when 9/11 occurred, they had 16 intelligence agencies. 16. Now, They did a report,
Who's they? Who's they?
US
the
government.
United States.
Oh, okay.
So they had 16. So they did a report, and you know what they came up with as a solution? Let's have 17. They added another agency on. And that's traditionally what actually happens when and that's where things become, the structure becomes dysfunctional, because you're just adding parts in, whether it be a car or anything. It's communication breaks down fundamentally. Now, to your point, you don't treat people like that, because the reality is they're a victim of the machine. You have a lot of people that wanted to do good work, and I see this all the time in the Navy, actually, in particular, where they come into the organization and they actually have some great ideas, and they get drowned out by the structure itself. So, and that structure is basically, it is because the solution is just to throw money at a problem and just add on. And that's what essentially, to the point where it's, again, you're just making creating a bureaucracy. And whether you're building a car with too many components, that where the cost keeps going up as opposed to the cost going down. And so it's not that you don't get rid of the people, but you do liberate them. And so there is a distinction. You don't necessarily,
when you can somebody out of the.
I'm not saying that's my whole point. You don't have to do that.
Well,
you don't.
But they're doing it.
Well, okay, and I'm not, and I don't think that you're right, that you don't treat a human system like that. But you have to take apart whatever it is that you're doing, because the bias is to just build on top of something.
That's right. But you can't, this is the other problem. When we understand that the observer can't be separate from the observed, then you can't rip people apart like that as if they're a part of a machine. And that's unfortunately we keep using the machine metaphor.
Does it have to be either or? I mean, I
Joe
think
and Richard, can you
Well,
read my comments? Can you read my comment in the?
if you treat people like
chat?
machines too long, you're violating a first principle anyway, that of the pulsative nature, all and all in.
And all in. Nature is pulsative. We just saw it. It is vibrating. That is going to one phase to other, always. Do you understand what pulsative means? Pulsative means relational. It is vibrating. Okay. I send you, send back to me. I send you, send back to me. We're playing like that. It's like volleyball. It's pulsative. If nature is pulsative and everything in nature is a fractal of nature, is pulsative, then if you treat one component as a machine for too long, that is, you're suppressing that machine. It's not going to work because you are violating that first principle. So to the point of Richard, he's right all the way.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with it.
Richard, yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Richard is right all the way. You can, even in the military, you have to have feedback from people. If you don't, the armies that do like that always going to defeat.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what happened, though, and that was the point of the intelligence agencies. The feedback didn't come in. That they didn't coordinate. They didn't talk to it. It was so bureaucratic that the feedback loop was perverted, and then their wonderful solution was to come up with another agency.
Exactly.
But that's not a good approach. Now,
because they don't know synergy.
That's correct. That's exactly correct.
And synergy is a consequence of finiteness. Another one.
Absolutely.
Synergy is a consequence of finiteness. You need to be imaginative about using what you have to achieve more.
To Joe's point, I think Joe sent this out to everybody a while ago, but Elon took his Model 3 which consisted of 171 metal pieces, and in the new Model Y, reduced it down to two pieces of metal.
Mhm.
And as a result, 1,600 fewer welds because he went in and just gutted it.
And think
And-
about that on top of, tightening a supply chain, and that's a feedback loop
Exactly.
too. I mean, so if
To
you tighten this,
to,
good.
to three pieces, Steve, you forget the one who's putting them together. To put together the two pieces
Yeah, it's a robot.
is the third. Exact.
It's a robot. It
Yes,
is a
so
machine.
his system is three. It's not two.
Well, I mean, they actually got rid of the robots. They,
No, but
Yeah,
by
because
getting rid
they're
of
casting,
by
they're
getting
casting
rid
the
of the
system.
robot, by getting rid of the robot, you create another robot of different type. You cannot
Well,
reduce
except
less
they
than
went
three.
except they went from 171 parts down to 3 parts. They did that in casting. So,
Right.
and there were 1,600 welds going on, and there were much more than one robot doing the 1,600 welds because that car would
Exactly.
move down the line. There were multiple robots doing those welding, supervised by a human being. Now that human being, instead of supervising 1,600 welds, is supervising one casting. Anyway,
Right. And it just, I mean, just to the point though, I want to make sure that it's because I don't, I think Richard's hitting on a really important point. There's the ethical and aspect of this as well, and the human aspect of it, where if you're really kind of reimagining something, you're figuring out how to work with those individuals and not necessarily just disregard them. So that's the other end of that. And I think that that's an important part. But the other aspect of it is organizationally, it's our bias is to throw money at a problem and just add on. And when you just add on and you're not doing it thoughtfully, that it ends up perverting the feedback loop.
yeah, and I want to say something in defense of Elon, although it's going to be politically unpopular. By the way, I just put that picture of the auto with the little words on it in the chat. So if you want to pull it down now, you can do that. When Elon got in there, the first thing he did was send out an email to everybody offering them 8 months of severance if they quit now. So it wasn't like he just went in and just started firing people. He went in and said, I'm going to give you 8 months of severance, quit now, and I'm going to pay you for 8 months so you can go out and find a good job. And a few people listened. A few people listened. The rest of them just thought it was the same old, same old. And with Elon Musk, there's no same old, same old. Okay. It's I think unfortunately, I think it's about time to go. It's 10:47. We have maybe 14 minutes. I've got a couple good takeaways here. I've been excited about this. So Manu, how are you feeling tonight and what are your takeaways?
I just feel like I should feel. I think that this is what we look for into these discussions. It's not reading a book for the sake of reading a book, but it's reading it and then experiencing it, experiencing what we do in light of a book to better understand. And better understand what I mean is principles and how to apply them practically. And I think that today is one of example of those. So I'm very appreciative. And I love you guys. That's all.
Yeah.
And how do you feel? What do you take away?
Oop, you're muted.
Okay, I've got quite a few things here. I'm going to start off with the one that we talked about just now. Because when you look at being a person, right, then you have and the notes is it doesn't exist, right? And then you talked about the radial, and we can't see the radial, right? So because we talked, okay, I'm also going back to the consciousness part, because for human beings to even be able to be conscious, right? To have this consciousness about things and the awareness of what exists out there and what how people are feeling and so on. I was thinking about the experience I had with talking to a journalist for the Chinese newspaper, in Malaysia. And we were trying to explain to them what we were doing in our school. And we realized that they had no context. They could not, there's no language for them to use for the things that we are talking about. And so for them, it was so far off that there was no way they could talk about what we were doing in our school for the Chinese newspaper. And it's not because the Chinese language doesn't have the words or the ability to explain this. It's because in Malaysia, when education happens, it is primarily all the facts and it's knowledge. It's just pure knowledge. There's no consciousness. There's no. If you look at what happens in the Chinese schools in Malaysia, they value academic studies and facts and what you can get out of the books. So they don't explore beyond that. So if you try to talk with the heads, things like that, the consciousness part, right? For it to actually happen, you need to have the language, and they articulated it and so on. And for it to be meaningful and for the consciousness part to the people need to have that language for it, yeah. And I realized that for that experience I had with the Chinese newspaper, that you can't see it's the inside, the radial, and what goes around it that you cannot see, because the note part is what you just see on consciousness part to come into play. And then the other one I got out of this was the close packing. Yes, we talked about the close packing. Now went down the path of Model T, then it's making all the sense in the world, right? You're making it as tight and as efficient as possible. And so now actually we've been looking at the education part of the flow, what do you call ephemeralization. So I got my team, please, you got to think about how to make this more efficient, right? Because the education industry is one of the least efficient industries out there. You throw a lot of resources at it, but what the kids are getting out is a whole lot less than the resources that we put in, right? So on our part, now we're going to look into, and so we went down the path of the kids coming into the school, same amount of time. How do we get the learning across? And we realized that if you add the human component and then you make it as real as possible, like link it to the real world, and you teach them multiple skills at one time. We're talking about skills and not content. So if you, like what we do with the entrepreneurship in there, the kids are getting 3x value, and then when we added the environment, they're getting the 4th and the 5th X, impact skills and green skills, right? So they're walking away with 500% more value and skills than their peers that are studying only the academic side, right? And for that to happen, to make that happen, I get this a lot. So, but they're already studying academically so many hours. How do you put this in? And they can't see where the time comes from to give them all these additional skills, right? So we had to let them know that, look, you do these skills and get the kids to work on all this real world stuff. They pick up 500% skills value at 60% of the time required to just study academically one skill. Does that make sense? Yeah. So right now we're trying to push it further to see how we can do it with fewer teachers because not all teachers are great teachers, and you want the kids to have access to great teachers, right? So with a few of our partners, we've been exploring AI, but then AI as a tool, not AI as a solution to replace the human side, right? Yeah, so those are the things. But if we start to do that, I can have a few teachers who are great teachers to anchor everything, and then the rest can be they can be facilitators. Yeah. But okay, anyway, that's a path we went down. And the last bit is because Richard, you haven't spoken yet. I'm looking at the Galileo Commission, right? So maybe just because just now you talked about it, and then started going down the path of the education system. Maybe can you give us a little bit more as to what you felt about the Galileo Commission on the consciousness part? Yeah. So Richard, yes, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good overall. The one thing I'm taking away is the quick understanding of how to count frequencies. It was there right in front of me, and I didn't recognize exactly how easy it is to figure out the frequencies. So that's the one thing. The other thing out of our kind of latter discussion is that I almost have a feeling now that with Fuller talking about 100% of humanity, and I'm underlining humanity 1,000 times, that until that flag gets out in front of everybody, we're not going to have schools or businesses or politicians or anybody working for that purpose, that 100% of humanity. And we're just going to keep ending up working for the advantage of the privileged few, however that gets figured out. And we're going to keep working on the Malthusian principle of the so-called Darwinian principle of the fittest survives and the others have to go, which is all it's what eugenics has always been about, whether it's been in a democratic sort of society like my province here, which was one of the provinces that generated the whole idea of eugenics, and so it's really I'm like Manu. I really enjoy these. This is the real sort of ground zero education for me, and I'm sure for all of us in lots of different ways. But it's also a very kind of sad realization that it's the 100% of humanity factor that is not seeping through. Because if we were working for 100% of humanity, then we would do our best to try and make sure the education system was doing the kinds of things that Anne's doing, that you would come out as a entrepreneur for the common good, not for to just align your own pockets, that sort of thing. So, but we and it's big royal we seem to be trapped in this. And what I really liked about the Galileo Commission when I first found it a few months ago was its manifesto that says materialist science has to shrink. It has to open the door for other kinds of knowing and science to blossom, to flourish, and in that sense, whatever the canopy is eventually going to be, it's going to be a mixed canopy of knowledge and science, and not just a single sort of dominant methodology. And what I learned from another piece of work that I was doing about a study that was done in Glasgow, University of Glasgow, that looked at the interplay, could be the concave convex, of Western colonialism and Western science. And they worked in partnership for several hundred years, I guess, and maybe still do, that one is used to advance the other. One is needed in order for the other to grow and prosper. And so it's this domination idea that the man has dominion over the earth, meaning having dominion means we can exploit it and extract from it and treat it as if we're separate from nature. That's the other thing that I'm getting out of a lot of this now is that you can't we cannot separate ourselves from nature. We are of nature. So it's not like nature does that and I do something different, or that I have to get in tune with nature. I am of nature. So that's what I'm learning from lots of these discussions, this one included. So it's invigorating. It's I've just had somebody congratulate me because I was 42 years with my Living Works company. And the beauty of that is that I'm still on that path. I can wake up every morning and see what's going on in different parts of the world with what we started 40 years ago. And so it's just a path that whatever path you get on, you very often just stay on it for an entire lifetime. And you see the ups and downs and the ebbs and the flows. But if we could all be on a ebb and flow that in the long run treated us if we were 100% of humanity and everything was being done to sort of help me along as well as helping everybody else along. So that's what I get out of these. It's really invigorating, and it's always a great way to wind up a Saturday evening for me. So, Joe, how are you feeling, and what's your takeaway?
I'm feeling pretty good, actually. You know, the thing that I was actually kind of looking at when we were having our discussion was some previous parts of the chapter and how they build on one another. And you can actually see the pattern much more clearly looking back. And so, and what you see is these different structures that are being shown and how space is actually being used efficiently. And it really was captured well because I was looking at, you know, how the example of the cookies were, you know, a great place to start the chapter to really kind of, you know, demonstrate the triangular pattern versus, you know, the square, and how you could actually use space so much more efficiently. And I think that that's actually a really important point, because to Manu's point, that you really understand, how objects are fit together. And then if you understand that, you understand that they have a purpose behind them. And you can determine if that purpose is necessary. And that's where I think ephemeralization kind of comes in. When you really understand a structure, that you kind of can reduce it to it's the essential elements of what it is. And so, and that's a very big part of what Bucky, you know, professed, is the idea, and that was the counter to Malthusian thinking, is that you would actually do more and more with less.
Yes.
So in order to make it work for 100% of humanity. So while you know, and I share a lot of the concerns, I think that there's always two sides, and you have to find a way to make things work together. And the other thing that actually popped out at me was when I was looking at your diagram initially, Anne, I really appreciated the resilience part in particular. I mean, the consciousness part, but also the resilience part. I thought that was really interesting, because what happens is when you look at these structures, that's exactly what they are. They're resilient. And because of the connections between them, you can see the interconnectedness between the structures. So that does breed a certain amount of resilience. And, you know, I think that's also the basis for the looking at things from a regenerative perspective versus looking at things from a reductionist perspective. So and so seeing that is you know, it was interesting how it all came together. But it really was by just listening to everybody speak, you know, and just flipping through the pages back through the earlier parts of the chapter, you can really see how these things build on one another clearly. And it's much more clear looking back than it is, you know, well, that's what Steve Jobs he said. It says, you know, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not going, you know. So anyway, Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away?
Well, I've loved tonight. I want to say that in previous iterations of this meeting, oftentimes we just go from one section or paragraph to another section or paragraph, and anytime there is some lack of clarity or lack of understanding by any one participant, that just all got left behind, and we just moved on to another topic. And what I love about what we're doing and what we've by consensus have chosen to do, hell or high water, ease of communication or not, we're going to discuss what we have here. and then I'm in total agreement with everybody that's on the call. That's how we're growing. That's the value of this. Now, look, I got 5 major takeaways here, and I'm going to go ahead and post them in the chat. And they're just big time revelations for me. Yeah, and they all posted in. It looks like they're all going to go in on one thing. So I'm going to post them there for the heck of it, but I'm also going to do what I can to read them to you based on what some notes I've been taking while you guys have been sharing. I'm so excited about this. And we could have started our close 5 or 10 minutes earlier, because although we started substantially beyond the appointed time, we're running a little over, and I apologize for that. So there are no straight lines. There's some typos in here. So there are no straight lines in the universe. Universe is curved. There are no spheres in the universe. Energy manifests in toroids, which tend to be spherical. There's some typos in here. However, every torus has disruptions caused by angular momentum of the parts within the torus, and these parts also manifest as tori. These are fractals. And I forgot to put the fractals in there, but I'm going to stick it in there now. And maybe I've done a couple type corrections here, and so maybe I'll shove that in a minute too. 3, nodes are not real. I guess, nodes are real. Nodes are real, and they're not visible. All I can see of a node is the energy that I reflect off of it. And the energy that is reflected is a projection of the node that is observing it. So all I can see of another node is the parts I see in me. And the parts I don't see in me, I will never see them at another node. And of course, this goes back to Richard's problem, how do I in sociology relate to people when how do I speak French? How do I speak French when I don't know French and the guy I'm talking to speaks French, right? 4, nodes relate at 90 degrees. This is reality. And the relationships are not at 90 degrees and they are not visible because everything is bent and curved and refracted and the universe is crazy. Okay, good. And finally, number 5, radials connecting the nodes are real and they are not straight or direct either. they're bended around by all this precession. So I'll just say that, bended by precession of all this energy. Anyway, those are my takeaways. Spelling, and you know what? I'll probably be really sorry that I did this tomorrow because I'll wake up in the morning and say, "Oh crap, that was stupid," and "Oh shoot, I forgot this and that." But hey, I've had so much fun tonight, and anybody want to send me a communication on those things? I just pasted the new updated retyped. I've added a few words and everything in there. So I'm really grateful for tonight. I'm grateful to have another glimpse at reality and how purely a reflection it is of me. I'm writing this book on extreme mindfulness just as and I'll tell you, I looked at it again tonight. In fact, I moved it here. I hope my book is as fun as this.
By the way, I've not yet received it.
You haven't?
No, I don't have it. Anne said she was going to send it to me.
Anne, you're on mute, Anne.
You're mute.
Anne, you're on mute.
Kilimano, I was just going to check because we sent it out a couple of weeks ago. I sent the same time I sent to Kelly because I gave up trying to pass it to my friends from Cape Town because I wasn't going to see them anytime soon. So I sent one to Kelly and I sent one to you at the same time. Kelly already received his. So let me check and see where it's stuck at. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the way.
By courier or by post?
By post because the courier would have.
The post office here. The post office here in South Africa is filling up the pass.
Okay, let me know
the
if
post office is bankrupt,
Oh.
So people use couriers, FedEx, all of these things.
Yeah. When I shipped something to you, I found that out.
Yeah.
And okay, good. Are we complete on that conversation?
The problem is the cost of the book. So what I'll do is if it doesn't get, I'll text you.
All right, we're complete. And the final thing is, and the final thing for me is my takeaway is I am so grateful for magnets. This thing changed my life. Trying to build a tetrahedron and then finally going into a double tetrahedron, being able to change the colors, notice the parts. Sometimes I have to put tape on them to keep track of what's going on. This thing changed my life because I'm totally convinced that electromagnetic energy is it's what saves the earth from the sun. It's what makes life happen, electromagnetic energy. And to understand, to watch this ball roll across the table.
And gravitation.
Gravitation, right.
And gravity. Electromagnetic, that's radiation.
Yeah,
and gravitation
simultaneously. So balls roll across the table and they attract to each other. And that's how sticky life is.
They attract and fall in love.
Yeah.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
Ball rolls attract each other and fall in love.
Yeah.
Fall in love, gravitation.
That's right. But they don't just go side by side at a two-dimensional plane. They roll on top of each other. And I'm not going to go any further than that. Okay.
But they're not yet, when they roll on top, they're not yet in love.
That's right.
Until they fall in the hole of love, in the gravity of love.
And I'll tell you what, if you watch the movie Interstellar, that whole proposition is that gravity is love. And if you read John chapter 15, where John goes through and describes the parable of the vine and the branches, the whole thing is about love. It's about gravity.
Look at this. Before you go. Here.
Okay. I think I'm complete. So for now.
Look at this.
I'm going to pin you up here so I can look at that, Manu.
Yes.
Okay,
They
good.
are rolling and falling in love. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, wonderful. That kind of looks like a uterus, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Hmm.
And it's nice to know those balls stack on top of each other. They
I was
do
about
not
to
want to
think
lay
about that.
side by side. My brain wants to think in two dimensions. Those puppies want to go into tetrahedral shapes. And I now understand the convex relationship between all that. Hey, you guys are I love this. I love this conversation. So see you all next time.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
They roll on top of each other. I love it.
Okay. I'm saving here. Saving the chat. Steve, don't go yet. Okay, good. Bye.